Hello everyone, my name is Hugo Sampaio, I'm from Brazil, and I wrote this paper with my advisor Shusaburo Motoyama. The paper title is Implementation of a Greenhouse Monitoring System Using Hierarchical Wireless Sensor Network. The summary of this presentation, I will give a brief introduction, then I will explain the node development. I will show them the experiment and results, and finish the presentation with conclusion and future work. The continuous advance in wireless sensor network is making possible innovation in many different areas, such as smart cities, smart homes, health monitoring, and agriculture. This paper focuses on greenhouses. The wireless sensor network can be implemented with a cluster or hierarchical structure. The cluster network needs that all nodes have equivalent processing power, also needs a higher processing power, for example, to cluster-head election algorithm. The hierarchical network allows heterogeneous devices with lower processing power. We considered hierarchical approach more suitable for scalability in the greenhouse. In this figure, we can see the proposed hierarchical wireless sensor network. On top, we have the coordinator node. The coordinator is responsible for creating and managing the network. Below it, we have the router nodes. The routers are responsible for expanding the network signal and allowing more nodes to connect to it. On the lowest level, we have the sensor nodes and the actuator nodes. For this, we can use the ZigBee protocol. The ZigBee protocol says that we have a coordinator node, router nodes, and sensor nodes. The sensor nodes can enter a sleep state mode. The nodes can have n children, and this tree-like hierarchical network is scalable and can be modeled using a queuing theory as shown in 9. Let's take this figure as an example. We have several greenhouses with sensor and actuator nodes represented by the black dots. We also have router nodes represented by the R. The sensor nodes will send the information to the coordinator nodes, where the packets will be analyzed and processed. The information can be stored in the base station. The coordinator node is responsible to inform an actuator nodes when it needs to be activated. Let's take an example of one section of this greenhouse. In this figure, we have an example of one section of a greenhouse. In a greenhouse, we can have different types of sensor nodes. In this example, we have a soil sensor, an air sensor, and a light sensor. The soil sensor will inform when the soil is dry or wet. The air sensor will inform the air temperature and humidity. The light sensor will inform the light levels. We also can have actuator nodes in a greenhouse. In this example, the actuator will switch on a water pump or a fan or an air conditioning inside a greenhouse to control the environment. Now, we will explain the nodes development for the coordinator nodes, the sensor nodes, as well as the actuator node. The coordinator node was built using an Arduino Uno connected to a ZigBee antenna. The Arduino has a microcontroller named ATmega328P. The microcontroller runs a program that will send information to the ZigBee antenna as well as read information received from the ZigBee antenna. To store this information, the Arduino can forward the data to a computer using the USB port. The Arduino Uno has 6 analog ports. The analog ports are used to connect the sensors to read the raw data from it. The Arduino also has 13 digital ports. The digital ports are used to switch on and off the sensors. The ports in the Arduino works at 5 volts. The Zigbee antenna used has its own microcontroller and works in 2 modes, transparent mode or AP mode. On transparent mode, every data the Zigbee antenna receives from the Arduino will be automatically packed and sent forward to a predefined destination in the Zigbee antenna. On the API mode, the entire packet must be built in the Arduino microcontroller. The sensor nodes were developed using an Arduino Uno connected to a Zigbee antenna, as well as a sensor. The sensor has 3 ports, a positive port, a data port, and a negative port. The positive port will be connected to a digital port of the Arduino to provide energy. In this example, it was connected to the D12 port of the Arduino. In the Arduino, it will be programmed to switch on and off the D12 port only when the sensor is needed. The data port of the sensor is connected to an analog port of the Arduino. The analog values read from the sensor is shown from 0 to 1023, and these values are the same as an scalar from 0 to 5 volts. On the Arduino, the program will run analog reads and the number of the ports, in this case 0, and store it in a variable, x. This value will be put in a scale and be sent to the Zigbee antenna. For example, if x is equal or higher than 900, light will receive 9, and the microcontroller will send the information to the antenna using the command serial print light. If the antenna is configured to the AT mode, it will get the light value encapsulated automatically and forwarded to the destination. The actuator node was developed using an Arduino Uno connected to a Zigbee antenna and 2 actuators. The first actuator is a water pump, here on the red circle. The water pump needs 1 ampere to work, but the Arduino has a maximum output of 40 milliamperes. So we're gonna use a DC motor driver and battery to power the water pump. The Arduino will be responsible to control the DC motor driver. When the soil is dry, the coordinator node will send a message to the actuator node. The actuator will then switch on the port D6, wait 5 seconds, and switch off port D6. The second actuator is the step motor here on the red circle. The step motor uses 4 digital ports to control it. The step motor is used to simulate a shade screen in response for the light sensor. An experiment was carried out to test the prototype wireless sensor network. We used 3 sensor nodes. The light sensor node used an LDR sensor. The air sensor node used the DHT11 sensor. The soil sensor used an hygrometer. The actuator used a water pump and a step motor. The water pump was activated when the soil is dry, and the step motor is simulating the shade screen on the LDR sensor. The conditions for the experiment are: it was carried out on an external controlled environment. The duration of the experiment is 72 hours. The sensing rate has a 1-minute interval, and are expected a total of 4,320 packets per sensor node. The gathered data from the experiment was analyzed and put into graphs. Here we have the air sensor node graph. The orange line represents the air temperature on Celsius degrees, and the blue line represents the air humidity on percentage. The graph shows us that when the temperature rises, the humidity lowers, and when the temperature lowers, the humidity rises. This shows us when it's daytime and nighttime. A few errors occurred around minutes 1100, 1800, and 2800. The results for the light sensor node is shown on this graph. We use the scale from 0 to 9 for the light sensor node, as 0 being dark and 9 being total light. On the graph, we can see when it's nighttime and daytime. And again, nighttime, daytime. All values above 9 are considered sensor errors. In the graph, we can see that the nighttime is a lot shorter than the daytime. This can be due to network errors when the coordinator was not receiving the message from the light sensor node. Most of the errors are concentrated during nighttime. The results of the soil sensor node is shown in this graph. To determine the scale of wet and dry, first we insert the hygrometer in the soil and pour water on the soil. The maximum level obtained in the experiment is 6. The scale may vary depending on the composition of the soil. The coordinator node was configured to send a message to the actuator node when the value for the soil is equal or lower than 2. In this experiment, the water pump was activated automatically 12 times as marked on the graph. All values above 6 are considered sensor errors. If repetitive values of 2 or lower occurs, it means that the actuator node is not receiving the message from the coordinator. These are considered network errors, and it occurred here and here. And here now we can have a closer look when the water pump is activated. Here in this graph, we can have a closer look on the activation of the water pump. On minute 210, the soil level was 3, and on minute 211, the soil level was 2. This means the coordinator will send a message to the actuator to switch on the water pump. The actuator node was configured to switch on the water pump for 5 seconds every time it receives a message from the coordinator indicating the soil is dry. On minute 212, the soil level was 4. This indicates that the water pump was activated. The analyzed data give us as results the total packet loss per sensor node. It was expected a total of 4,320 packets per sensor node. The table shows us the packets received by the coordinator from each sensor node. From the air sensor node, 4,242 packets were received, with 1.81% of packet loss. The soil sensor node had 4.26% of packet loss, and the light sensor 34.44% of packet loss. Most of errors of the light sensor occurred during the night time. From the implementation and the experiment, we can conclude that this hierarchical wireless sensor network has a processing bottleneck on the serial ports that connect the antenna to the Arduino. The antenna also has a limit of n children nodes. For future work, we want to test and field experiments in a real greenhouse. Also, model hierarchical network with priority queues and considering packet loss, as well as considering different packet sizes and rates for different sensor nodes. I would like to thank you for your attention, and for any questions, please contact me on this email.